Hey guys, and welcome to this video all about setting up your team on the T side of Mirage. And this will be the final video in our setting up Mirage series. So make sure you've watched the other videos, that you're nice and up to speed. Now, wasting no time, let's get into our first big topic. And this is all about early round mid control options. Now, in our beginner's guide video, we looked at defaulting out mid just like this with a top mid smoke and a connector molly, and as well as a couple flashes like this. We talked through kind of an extended example of this, and how you'd come out top mid, come behind the boxes, and then go from there, and then think about taking ladder or perhaps connector control or something like this. So the first additional option we're going to look at fairly quickly is going to be defaulting with a top mid and a window smoke. And around these, we're just going to throw exactly the same nades. That connector molly at the start from over here, as well as a couple of flashes. You can do them differently, how you like them, and you could also throw in a short flash like this, where you just throw it over the wall here to catch any of those fast jumping CT AWPers over here. So, now that we've thrown the nades, we'll just leave the smokes here for simplicity. Let's talk about a few kind of aggressive openings, because throwing this window smoke as well opens up a lot more options for you as the T side, where you can get more aggressive behind the smokes and be a little bit safer about it. And also using two smokes to go for mid, I think you really should be trying to play a bit more aggressive, to be honest, when you are going out, because if you aren't going to get aggressive and you're just going to go behind the top boxes, then why waste the smoke onto window? So with these, you could do something like where you have your terrorist AWPer coming out round the side of the top mid smoke, and then you could potentially flash connector for him. So perhaps you get one player out this side, you leave one of the riflers here. This is your AWPer, and you get this player to flash connector, and then this player can come here and take on this sort of angle onto connector. And at this time, it would be pretty likely, to be honest, that this connector will be one-way smoke like this. But playing up on catwalk, this sort of angle, especially with a scope as well, this is much more favorable for a terrorist player than taking any fights down here above the smoke. So this can be a really good option. Just get it that flash onto connector and then get a bit aggressive. They can even start walking up and stuff if they're feeling more confident or whatever. In that sort of situation, aside from this, you can do things like going fast towards connector with the riflers, where you might get them kind of jumping down the side here and then running fast towards connector. And this can be like really good if you know the CT side doesn't have an AWP and you want to get really aggressive, because the only way you can really punish this easily is with an AWPer in this sort of situation. But if there's no AWPer, you might be able to force like a 2-on-1 versus the connector player, and especially having such an early timing onto swinging this, you really might catch them off guard. So this can be kind of good options. But just to say, if you're going like fast down for connector, if the CT player in connector does counter smoke con, just cancel, because it's very, very risky to come through the smoke and things like this. And I've certainly seen at lower level plays where people hard commit to, like, say, I've seen a lot of teams run strats where they'll throw like this smoke at the start as well and trying to go really fast connector, and they'll go through the smoke and just 3 of them or 2 of them will just die with no chance of a kill themselves. So make sure you can go aggressively for the opening, but make sure you've got that kind of protocol in a sense to be able to cancel things. And if you haven't come across this idea before, cancelling plays and executes should be decently common in matches actually, and people should be very used to having almost the space to say in the comms, let's cancel, like we're going to die if we go for this, and then having the power themselves. So that's just a good idea. Now, that's going with a window and top mid smoke. Let's talk about kind of fast swinging mid, going very fast, contact heavy onto mid. So in this sort of situation where you want to go contact heavy onto mid, when you're playing as into a gun round on a gun round yourself, the best thing to do is probably to have an AWP on this player. So whether that's the AWPer or you're chucking the AWP over to him, a bit like kind of picking long early on Dust 2, have the AWP on this player, and then he can come out here and he can swing onto window, and you have the riflers swinging behind him. Now with this, what can really help is having someone, most likely your B default, can throw a window flash from up here just before you swing, and it just makes it a tiny bit safer, because this is a CT favored timing. If the CT AWP is on a decent spawn, to beat your kind of top spawn AWP yourself getting out. Having a window flash can be a good idea. Now, around this kind of opening itself, you can throw some smokes. So the way I would normally set up in my teams would be to have a window smoke, and because of the timings of when the smoke's going to bloom, this will not bloom until, I'm not sure, till you're probably out behind the top boxes or something with the rifles. You'll definitely get the opportunity as the first couple out to take the shots onto window. So in essence, if the idea in your head of the strategy is to go for the kill on the window player, you'll still get that opportunity. And that's certainly versus eco rounds, which I would call this a lot into eco rounds like this. Having the window smoke can be really good just to isolate the angles. But that's not the only thing you could do. You could also throw a short smoke, which is quite common, and then get some riflers up fast short. So the way you do it is you'd have your AWPer swinging on the window flash, and then you have the rifles probably swinging behind them and then running fast up catwalk. Almost not quite knife out speed, but very, very quickly. They're round here, just immediately swing, just in case there was some window, they have to take a fight, and then instantly get themselves up towards here. And then in this sort of situation, you'll find that you kill the connector player a lot. And again, these sort of things are very, very strong when you know the CTs have no AWPs in play, especially these days with the Kriegs in play and stuff. And even if you don't have an AWP in play, having a Krieg coming out early is still not a horrendous option. And as long as these three, or the first two at least, are well grouped, you're always going to stand a fairly decent chance of actually trading onto a window AWPer in the first place. So those are some options for going fast out mid with a window flash. You could actually do it dry with no nades. It is an option, and this is the sort of thing where it can be really good actually to do this once a half, especially if you've smoked windows so many rounds in a row and not given an AWPer an opportunity. This is the kind of getting a bit more, well, we are on the advanced videos now, so you should be kind of starting to tackle these sort of ideas. But once you've smoked window 5 rounds in a row, it's decently likely the CT AWP is not going to play window, as long as you're smoking top mid as well, because then there's no opportunities for them from window. And if you weren't smoking top mid, they could pre-molly and still play window. But yes, if you've isolated window a lot with utility, then there's a decent chance the CT AWP won't be playing window at the start, and consequently you can come out mid dry much safer. So there you go. There's some added options and 2 very, very fast options. So you can go fast for ladder control with a top mid, a catwalk corner smoke, and a window smoke, as well as some chain flashes onto connector, and then you get your top spawn going into fast ladder control like this. And I won't talk through that anymore here because I've already done a video that's on your screen right now. It's called Taking Fast Ladder Control with Evil Geniuses or something along these lines. Go and watch that. I break it down in much more depth and I explain exactly why having a play like that is very beneficial for your T side and all of these sort of aspects. And finally, one very, very fast option that I'm going to not explain very well is you can smoke top mid and then have one of the top spawn riflers coming out mollying window and coming through the top mid smoke, as well as another one coming lower. And then you double peek connect early on this, and because of the timings, the short player can't see this. So I'm not going to talk any more in depth about this. I'm going to link a video below by Sean Gares, and it might be time stamped in his video, but he did a video just after Cloud9 won the Boston Major using this strat. And this is the sort of thing where I've never liked it that much personally, but it's like a good option to have in your playbook, and it's fairly simple. And in terms of changing pacing and stuff, as we'll talk about in a second, this is very, very helpful. So I'll have it linked below as a Sean Gares video, so you can go and check that one out. Now, just to say, these have all been very early options. These are coming very fast out. You can take mid control during the mid round, and if you were to do so, I'd probably just smoke window and then try and go out on quite a few flashes for connector. So maybe you bounce one here early. It's quite difficult. Maybe you flash short as well and go out on a high flash. It's hard to say exactly what you can flash because going slow for mid opens up many more opportunities for the CTs. I mean, you can't get a molly onto connector because of the timings, because there could just be a CT AWPer sat up here before you even round the corner to get the molly off, and as well as potentially a cat jumping AWPer in this sort of position that's decently common during the mid round. So this is why taking mid in the mid round is a little bit risky. And normally, if you were going to go for mid during the mid round, you do it quite contact heavy and you do it with pressure onto the sides. And we'll talk through all of that in a moment. Right. So let's talk about how we're going to fit all of this mid stuff together. And the really important kind of idea or theory that you've got to understand here is all about pacing and pacing for mid control and why it matters. So pacing in general and staying unpredictable on your T side is very, very important as you get into higher and higher levels of play. And especially when we start talking about kind of the semi-professional level and definitely the professional level of competition where teams have hordes of analysts and the in-game leader and the coaches that will be looking at games and looking for holes in your play or looking for predictable elements. That's where pacing really, really comes into play. And in simple terms, pacing and staying unpredictable is your opponents will try to predict your moves in game. And they'll set up the way they're playing. They'll tailor their utility usage. A lot of this is subconscious for the players, but this is really what's going on, where they're trying to figure out what you're going to do and then shape their play to best counter you. So if you're becoming very predictable with your timings, with the way you're taking mid control, remember in the CT Mirage, I think it was the intermediate video where we talked about contesting mid control, we said that if you knew they were coming out with just the top mid smoke, there's loads of options that open up to play against it. And it's all of these ideas that if you're very predictable in your timings and the way you take mid, they can quite easily adapt to counter it. And this is a concept that goes across all the maps, but mid on Mirage is definitely an example where it's very, very easy actually as the CTs to punish basically any way of taking mid. And in my eyes, there's no way of taking mid control on Mirage where you cannot get punished pretty hard if the CTs know what's coming. And I think people will get a shock if they're not aware of these ideas of having good pacing and all of these sort of things. So just remember, guys, pacing is very, very important. If you're always going too hard, too fast, or even too slow all of the time, it's going to end badly for everyone. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. So the final topic in all of these setting up Mirage videos in general is going to be denying information and pulling rotations on that terrorist side. Now, these are really tricky topics actually to approach. And what we're going to do is look at a couple, not necessarily simple, but a couple very concrete examples. And then from there, hopefully you guys can start grasping the idea, and you'll build your own rounds around it. Because once you get the idea, it really isn't that complicated. You just have to understand what's the individual pieces of utility and what the pressure is going to do to that CT side. So let's talk about an example. So let's say on the previous gun round that you played. So this now we're talking about the previous gun round. On the previous gun round, you went explosive with jungle and stairs smokes as well as some entry flashes, as we talked about in the intermediate video on Team Mirage. Say you ran a strat like this, and you went very early round explosive like this with no nades on mid or something, and then you happen to win the round here because you entered the CT player, you got CT spawn for the answer after plant, and you played out your 5-on-4 and won it in the end. So let's say you won a round, the previous gun round you won in this fashion. So coming into this next gun round, which will probably be following an eco from the CT side, so that'll actually be 2 rounds later, what we're going to do is we're going to throw exactly the same nades early. So we're just going to have 2 players on our T side coming towards ramp, throwing those jungle stairs smoke, maybe changing the timing a little bit or something to slightly offset it, but we're going to throw these nades in the first place. And whilst these 2 are throwing the exact same nade set for the same strategy, we're going to have 3 players in mid. So once a couple of seconds after these smokes have bloomed, after the flashes have started going off, and maybe one player comes here and mollies bench or something, I don't know, or starts pre-firing sandwich, making a load of noise, I don't know. So after a couple of seconds, you can start shifting these players out for mid control. And from here, you're going to start shifting your players down towards connector very, very slowly, maybe leaving one on cat, maybe put this player in palace and leave this player deep ramp. So all these nades are starting to fade at this point, and maybe you try and end this round in a connector split or something. So what's really going on here? So because you've applied pressure onto A, so let's bring all these players back to mid. Let's bring it back to the point just before we started throwing the utility. Like this. So what we've done here is we've applied a lot of pressure onto A with these smokes and these flashes. And what this means is that, let's say the CT side is playing a retake A setup with an AWP window. Very, very likely setup for the start of the round. What will happen is that the connector player and almost certainly the AWPer will not be looking at mid. These nades will draw the attention of them from mid, very, very likely in this sort of situation. So what you've done is by using this utility is you've opened up a window where there's nobody looking mid at the start, or there's very likely none of these things are for certain, but in terms of the rulebook of CS, nobody should be looking mid after applying this pressure. So that's why we could shift out top mid with no utility and doing it silently. And the other thing to note here is that because we won the previous gun round, doing exactly this strategy, it's so likely that the CTs will overreact from their perspective to these nades. They'll drop 1 million nades onto Palace and onto ramp, all the smokes, all of the nades, and so much attention will be looking towards here. And when I'm calling T sides, this idea of using your previous gun rounds to open up plays in the next ones are probably a very core part of how I like to call games. And when you watch professional level play and you see people using utility and you're not quite sure why they're throwing it, and they're throwing utility here, but they're contacting it on this side of the map here. This is what's going on. They're pulling attention with nades to open up contact and aggressive plays across the map. So this is one kind of simple example. And just to say, on these sort of rounds, these are quite tricky to mid-round, these sort of rounds, because there's a lot that can happen. When you're running a set execute, like we talked about, we're saying that we ran on the previous round where we just went jungle stairs. All of the variables are pretty simple. There's only one place we're going out of. Everyone's in the same place. Once you've ran this round a few times, you'll kind of be able to picture in your head how it's going to play out roughly. But this situation here, when we're shifting 3 out mid, maybe bringing 1 player Palace, there's almost anything that can happen here because the players could re-swing window after a while of seeing nothing here. The connector player could start clearing mid, or quite likely is if you're playing a bad team, the short player will swing and you'll kill him. And very, very quickly, the rounds could become difficult for you to call. Even if you're going man advantage, they can be very, very difficult for you to call if you're not used to this sort of thing. So let's say that these 2 players are looking this way when the smoke goes down, you shift these 3 out mid and the short player swings thinking it's just an A exec. And you kill the short player. This requires much more mid-rounding than just going out stairs, just going out jungle. And you'll have to be much more acquainted with how to call these sort of situations in the mid-round. A lot of the pressure here is actually on the players, not the IGL, especially if the IGL is not one of these players, because these players have to understand that at this point, when there's only 1 player on B, committing now to a con split is probably not a brilliant idea, and you want to now probably start dropping their utility. They'll still have probably full utility in mid. They can start dropping the nades and start playing out more stand around and stuff there. So I just wanted to point out that when we're moving into playing rounds like this, when applying pressure and going contact heavy and stuff, this is when we're moving away from very set rounds in terms of calling, and you'll get a shock if you're not ready or practiced in terms of mid-rounding like this. It's much, much more difficult to mid-round that in this sort of situation than in one where you're doing a straight exec with everyone coming out of one area. So let's look at another example of kind of this sort of ideas of denying information and pulling rotations and all these sort of things. Let's say you throw top, mid, and window smokes at the start of the round. And then around these smokes, you're going to throw nothing else mid. Literally nothing else. And what you're going to have happen is you're going to have maybe your top spawn player getting fast into this smoke. So perhaps in this case, you might want to have a good spawn throwing the top mid smoke so this guy can knife out, run into it or something like this. It doesn't matter so much. They can probably just shift out afterwards if they want to play it a bit safer. So what we've done here is we've got 1 player out mid with no noise at all. And around this, we're going to group 4 players up towards apps. And then maybe at the start of the round, we had our B default throwing the pressure nades like this. And then we're just going to go into explosive B here, as we've talked about a few times on here in the previous videos. Is watch the 100 Thieves video if you need to, where you come with some entry flashes. These 2 come out or something, and then you clear the bomb site, and you've got this 1 player in mid. And then hopefully we can get the bomb down and play out an after plant on B or something like this. So let's think about what's actually happened here. So what we've done is we've got a solo player out mid with just the smokes, no flashes and no molotovs, group 4, and then go on to B. What's very, very likely is that the CT players here will actually overreact to the B hit, because when you get to high levels of play, maybe from below the professional level, so maybe if we're talking real terms like MDL and upper end advanced teams, this is when this stuff's going to work the best against them, because they're very used to saying if there's no nades onto mid, if there's only smokes onto mid, they're faking. But here you haven't. You've used the fact that you've thrown no nades against them. What's very likely is that when you start hitting B, this player can start shifting out, and he'll very likely get a fight onto the connector player, or be able to shift all the way up short and kill 2 players from behind or something, and play out, maybe even plant for short here for this player. So this again is quite advanced things, and this is the sort of thing where it's hard to describe, but it works better against better teams, because you have to sort of assume that they're going to react properly to these situations. But this is just a good example of why these top mid and window smokes are very, very powerful, because they just deny all of the vision for the CT side onto mid. They don't know necessarily if you're out mid 100. They can know if you cross the boxes. They cannot know if you're here, very likely, unless they're fast cat jumping. But as we said, if you're throwing the top mid smoke with a good spawn and running this player knife out into the smoke, they're not going to know you're there. So this can be a really good example of a round to from once a half, and this will have a lot of this will work very well against teams that try to play, that aren't aware that these sort of plays are open, maybe the way you want to phrase it. So, okay. So a while ago, I made some videos on Vitality and Furia about similar rounds to these. At least they were in the videos. There's probably parts of the videos that had similar rounds. So probably below, I'll have linked, probably with timestamps, so you can see more examples, because you probably do need to see more examples of this sort of thing to really get it. But these concepts are quite advanced, and don't be worried if you're not getting them at the moment. They're quite difficult really to implement them into your play. But anyway, guys, that is everything for this video and this entire Setting Up Mirage series overall. If you have any questions about anything through any of the videos, best place is my Discord server. Hop in there, put a message in general, or message me just normally in private messages or whatever on Discord. And from now on Mirage, it will just be kind of the standard content of the T execs. Maybe we'll do some round breakdowns on the CT side. Hopefully we can get some more matches played on the new patch, and we can start doing that. And if you guys do want full-on demo reviews or stuff like slower paced content, where it would literally be an hour long, to be honest, sitting through, like, let's say an Evil Genius's Mirage demo, and we'll probably do it in Gnosis like this, because it's so much easier to pull stuff out. I can do that, but I just have a feeling that it won't do very well, to be honest. I don't think it'll get that many views, especially when it's that long. So I can do it, but that's the sort of thing where I need to know. So hop in the Discord, say I want to see some long demo reviews, some long form stuff. If enough people want it, I'll do it. But for the moment, we'll stick to the kind of single round breakdowns and all those sort of things. A bit shorter content, easier to digest, better, works better on Reddit, works better on YouTube homepages or whatever when it's that sort of length. So the next map we're going to look over is Nuke. And on Nuke, there's a load and loads and loads of fun stuff on the T side. And we can do literally 50 videos on different things on T Nuke. And it's actually, in my eyes, it's not necessarily a more interesting map than Mirage, but from a kind of a standpoint of how you can make content off it and pull apart execs, it's there's a lot more ways we can go with Nuke, and you won't have seen it before really at all broken down like the way we're going to be doing it. So anyway, guys, if you enjoy that one, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. The social medias and everything like that are linked below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.